On today's episode of Dallas Mavericks Today, Coop and I are going to dive into the 5 biggest problems facing the Mavs this year as they look to hoist a championship trophy. Ilario B. He's Jeffrey Cooperstein. I am Harrison Graham. Before we get to that, it's the offseason. Things have slowed down. Let's reminisce.
Let's do it.
Who is your favorite Mavericks uniform of all time? And if you want to throw a favorite Maverick in there too as well, you can do that. Do you have a specific uniform that stands out compared to others?
It's got to be the throwback greens for me.
The cursive text?
Those are, yeah, with the cursive. Those are by far my favorite. The P. Diddy greens were really great as well. I don't know if you can even say Diddy on YouTube anymore.
No Diddy.
Those were great as well. The Mavs have had some really good uniforms. They're a very good color scheme.
Their classics are good too. Like, some teams feel the need to change it up all the time, and the Mavericks kind of standards. They're not like the best, but like they always are going to hold up. So, yeah, I mean, I'd probably agree that the green with the cursive text. I've liked their last couple city editions, to be honest.
The Black City edition last year was absolutely awesome. I think that should be a permanent uniform.
I kind of liked the cartoon one a couple of years ago. That one was decent. It was not a permanent one, but for 1 year it was fun. So, yeah, if you guys have a favorite, let us know in the comments. Okay, we're going to go from 5 to 1. Nico Harrison, and mind you, this was before he made the big splash to get Klay Thompson, said, hey, if we all come back and improve 10 to 15%, that's really all we need. I think he said that a little tongue-in-cheek. He still went out and made a big move. But I think for certain players, Coop, that definitely applies. I mean, I think you start with Derek Lively on that list. Like, if he in year 2 can take that next step, if anyone can improve by more than 15%,
that'd be great.
I think he's the guy that could really take a big leap this year.
Yeah, I didn't really include Luka and Kyrie on here because how can they even improve 10 to 15%? I'm not sure.
I think Luka every year of his career, except for maybe 2 years ago, has gotten better. But does he have another 10 to 15% year over year? That seems unlikely. Also, Kyrie, I mean, if anything, he might regress a little as he gets older. So.
Which is why you need these guys to elevate even more. I think Lively taking a year 2 leap is going to be really important. I think he's going to be the starting center for this team come October over Daniel Gafford, and he's going to really need to show that he's ready to be like this legit piece that the Mavs can rely on. Same with Najee Marshall. Now he's a good player. I just think him, Quentin Grimes, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Exum just all need to elevate their games just a little bit. Just raise the floor of this team to where even if things don't go right, you still have a chance to win on any given evening.
Yeah, I think out of this list, Lively's the clear top guy that I think could take a big jump. I would go Grimes too, and the reason is who he's playing with now. I think his offensive capabilities as a shooter could really elevate playing with Luka Doncic. I'm not sure Dinwiddie has another level. Is Exum going to shoot like he did last year? But
probably not.
But he can still elevate even if he shoots worse. Basically, just have more volume and still be efficient. I think Najee Marshall probably is closer to what he is, but maybe he shoots better playing with Luka. So, I think if a couple of these guys at least take a big jump, that would be very helpful. Number 4, are there enough shots to go around? And I think the answer is yes, Coop, because even though you want Luka, hunting to score a good amount, he's going to spread the ball around. He's going to average 8 to 10 assists per game. So I think the answer to this question is yes. I think a key to this as well is if Spencer Dinwiddie can be a playmaker off the bench, because it can't be Luka for the entire game.
I think the biggest question surrounding this is, will Klay be happy with the reduction in field goal attempts? He averaged, I believe it was the second lowest number of his career last year at 14.7. I don't think he's going to get more than 15 attempts a game here, so I think that number even lowers a little bit as well. So will Klay's ego kind of subside, and will he be comfortable with taking the third most attempts on a team on any given night? And maybe at some points he's taken less than 10. Is he going to be happy with that, and will he be satisfied with his role on the team if that continues to be the case?
You would think the answer is yes, and here's why. One, he took less money to come here. He seems motivated to win more than anything else based on his actions and his words. I'm not going to sit here and say if he's averaging 9 field goal attempts a game, he's going to be thrilled. But, I think he wants to win. I think he wants to play his role, and his role is to be a floor spacer and knock down open shots, whether that's 15 shots per game or 11. He needs to be okay with that because
that's what it's going to be.
I don't think the Mavs have sold him on some pipe dream of you're going to take 20 shots per game. I mean, that if they did, that's a ridiculous sell.
They sold him on being a starter, and it sounds like Golden State didn't sell him on being a starter, so maybe that's what he really cares about. And then we'll talk about what his role could look like at the end of games here in a second as well, which I think will contribute to his overall happiness on the team.
Speaking of more or less on field goal attempts, that's just one of many stats you can use when you place a PrizePicks entry. The best daily fantasy sports app has returned to Mavericks today, and you guys should create an account right now. Go to PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS to get a deposit match up to $100 when you sign up. Basketball season is just a couple months away, and once it's here on a nightly basis, you can start firing off your basketball entries, but football's around the corner. You can get rolling with that as well. The way it works, you set 2 to 6 player lineups and choose more or less on the statistical categories available, like field goal attempts per game. And let us know, by the way, do you think Klay will average more or less than 12.5 field goal attempts per game this year? Type M for more, L for less. That's one of many things: points, rebounds, assists, combo stats like points plus rebounds, 3-point attempts, 3-point makes. There's tons of them out there. You can cross over sports with your entries. If you want to do a little all-Texas one, you can do little Cowboys, Rangers, and Mavericks action when they all briefly overlap in October. Get started today. Fire your entries off and have a chance to make some money at PrizePicks.com/CLNS. The code CLNS gets you that deposit match up to $100. Okay, a few more here at number 3. We've talked about this a lot, Coop. Jason Kidd is going to have to, A, figure out this closing lineup, and B, I think he needs to grow as a coach in general.
Yep.
To be adaptable on the fly and figure out which combinations are working in what games. Like, obviously, you want to have go-to situations. Like, this is my starting 5. This is my lineup I go to if we need a late game stop. This is my offensive set lineup late in the game. This is my general closing lineup. But you got to figure those out first. Then the next step is really being adaptable. But yeah, they got to figure out who on most nights are going to be closing these games.
And I am one of the biggest Jason Kidd fans out there, but I do think this is one of his biggest flaws, where he just tinkers too much too late into the season, where they just don't have a cohesive and a set rotation that he likes to use, and he tries to just figure out all different sorts of lineup combinations, what works and what doesn't, as they head towards the postseason. Well, at this point, there's no time like the present to figure this out. Like, I think if Klay is not going to be a part of this closing lineup, which if I had to guess right now here on August 13th, I would say that he's not. That's got to be a thing that has to be established early, just so we know what the pecking order is. He knows what the expectations are going into the season, and he's able to manage the personalities and manage, the wants and needs of his best players. I think this is a very important thing that he has to figure out. I would say even before training camp, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, and look, obviously you have to be willing to change that if things aren't going well. But yeah, I mean, he's got to establish a starting 5, which I think we all know what it's going to be. Luka, Kyrie, Klay, PJ, and I would assume Lively.
Yep.
Maybe it's Gafford, but probably Lively. And a closing lineup. And you and I have both kind of said probably it's Najee Marshall instead of Klay Thompson. Now, if Klay's on a heater and Kyrie's struggling, maybe Klay's closing out at the 2 guard.
You can feel it out.
Who knows? But, yeah, you want those set kind of, hey, on the average night, this is what we're going to do. So I would imagine that's a big emphasis right now as things are kind of slow to kind of figure out the different rotations heading into the season. Number 2, play consistent defense. And look, the reality of investing in Klay Thompson, while we both think it's a good move, on paper, the defense could suffer a little bit. So How do you make up for that? Well, number 1, you got to be a better offensive team. But 2, how can you work around not having, a defensive dominant lineup, especially to start out these games? Well, I think Luka needs to continue to make progress in that regard. I think Lively has to take the next step, is just kind of knowing when to be aggressive and not over fouling and stuff like that. So I think that kind of ties back into point 5, Coop, of just like improving as a team, both individually and in those defensive set situations.
Look, there were stretches last year where the Mavs quite literally were the worst defensive team in the league, and there was a stretch last year where they quite literally were the best defensive team in the league. So they've shown that they can defend at a very high level for stretches of time. It just has to be more consistent. If you're consistently the 8th or 10th or even 12th best defensive team in the league, I think I would take that over having a stretch where you're the worst defensive team in the league and then the best for a stretch. You just got to be more consistent on that end, and I know it's a very long season and things happen, but in order to get to the postseason, in order to get where we think this Mavs team can get, they just have to be more consistent.
Yeah, I think 12 is a good benchmark. Can you be?
That's what I think they need to be.
A top 12 defense? Because on paper, this should be a top 6 to 8 offense at worst, potentially top 3 to 5. So I think if you're top 12 defensively, you're going to be in a good position to make some noise here. Mavericks basketball just around the corner.
About 2 months away.
Don't miss out. Yeah, training camp gets going on October 1st in Vegas. Media Day, September 30th, so it's all going to be here before we know it. Coop and I will have you covered the entire way. We can't wait. We know you guys are excited as well. So hit the subscribe button. We'll continue to plug out videos, get you ready for the season, and then we'll be in season mode.
Can't wait.
Should be a good time. Okay, lastly, I mean, this is out of their control, obviously.
Of course.
But it's just a fact, Coop, that the West is a gauntlet. It's not going to be easy. Like, even bad teams from last year are going to be better. Like, Memphis should be better if they're healthy. San Antonio should be better with Wemby entering year 2 and adding key veterans like Barnes and Chris Paul. So, you know, I think there's going to be 2 or 3 teams in the West that aren't very good, and the other 11 or 12 are going to be very good.
Yeah, I think Portland's a bad team. Outside of that, are there any true walkovers in the West? I mean, the Spurs are going to be better. The Rockets are going to be better. Sacramento's good. The Lakers won't be terrible. Every team
if Kawhi's healthy, the Clippers are at least 500. Probably.
Exactly. I mean, every team in the West is pretty damn good. And yes, they ran it last year and they ended up winning the conference. It's just not going to be easy again, especially at the top, given the improvements that Oklahoma City made. I think Minnesota's a very good team as well. So if the Mavs are going to do this thing once again, they're going to have to go through hell to do it. I mean, you still have Jokic and the Denver Nuggets, who I think take a step back, but they're still a very good team. It is out of their control, like you said, but the West is tough, man. It's really tough.
This team can't just assume, hey, we just show up, we'll win 50 games.
Not happening.
Like last year, and granted, after the trade, they were the best team in the West the rest of the way, but they were fighting to avoid the play-in the last 6 weeks of the regular season. I mean, it was like, hey, I mean, you and I at one point were like, okay, just at least be a 7 or 8 so you have 2 cracks at it. But then with about a month left, it was like, okay, like let's get out. Let's get out of the play-in. So, you know, ideally you want to start a little bit better this year. Obviously, different circumstances last year, but yeah, I mean, it's not easy at all. And look, the reality is, and I don't think Dallas would be this team, but there's going to be a couple teams that get squeezed out of the playoff mix just because that's how good the West is right now. So make sure you're not that team, man.
Yeah, the Mavs have had a bad history of starting slow over the past almost 10 to 15 years.
It's been a while.
It just feels like they always...
Once Dirk started to decline, they really have not been a fast starting team.
Go start out... What if you just go win your first 5 games? That would be pretty sick. So it's going to be very difficult in the West once again. But who's to say the Mavs... I mean, the Mavs are the hunted. They won the conference last year, so everyone's going to give them their best shot. They're just going to have to come ready to play every night. Otherwise, they will get left behind.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, there you go. The 5 biggest questions facing the Mavs entering this season. Who do you guys think is the biggest threat to the Mavericks this year? I think in the West it's the Thunder, and overall it's Boston. But if you guys have some other teams, let us know, and we'll see you guys soon.
See you.
Peace.